Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul, your host, BL about Lost Souls podcast. I'm joined by Adam Camilleri
G'day.
and Red Powell.
What up?
Welcome. This is going to be the Emperor's Children show, where we're going to be talking about the newest addition to the Legions of the Pantheon in the Chaos Space Marine side of things, and it's pretty sick.
It's
Sick
so
and
good.
sick and like excessive. See what I did there?
Pick your poison. Yeah. Ooh. And no, but this is really cool because it has been. I mean, how long has it been since we got the Death Guard book? It was the start of 8th edition.
The book? Oh, you mean
got
when it came out with
when
like,
Death Guard became their own standalone? Was the start of 8th edition.
and Materion
8th
hit
edition.
it then, and
Yeah. So we're like 7-ish years since we got our first like standalone, Chaos Cult subfaction.
I think I want to say Thousand Suns were there really. Thousand Suns with Magnus was before.
true.
That was
Yeah,
first.
yeah,
It was the first.
yeah,
It came
that
in
was the
during
first.
the Psychic Awakening or Realm.
Yeah.
Or maybe was it Psychic Awakening?
It was-
It's full Acadia. The
The Ruin Storm.
What's it called?
Gathering Storm.
40k Gathering Storm.
Gathering
yeah,
Storm.
yeah,
We got there.
we did it.
Everybody, if you got there before us, give yourself a no prize. And,
Make sure you comment on the video and tell us you are smarter and faster.
we appreciate y'all being here. Yeah, by the way, please leave some comments. And like 2 back-to-back shows came out last week, and so now we're back this week. There's a highly anticipated Codex. Games Workshop was kind enough to send us a copy of the stuff, and cannot wait to be talking about it with y'all. When I say highly anticipated, I know a lot of people that have played Slaanesh and Emperor's Children for a long time, either because they like the aesthetic, they like some of the characters and what have you. And we're going to be talking about all the cool army rules, and of course some of the new models and a new Primarch we're going to talk about. But I'm going to go on record right now saying I think Lucius is going to be the star. Like, Lucius will be the standout character in the short term of this book.
100% agree. I mean, his head could not get big enough for the ego that is going to inflate from the fact that I do genuinely think he's the best character in this book.
Lucius, and might be one of the best characters, like in the top 5 for the game right now.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's very strong. And he does everything. Like, he's a self-contained scoring piece, denial piece, loan up piece. He's got extra durability on top of what you would expect for something of a similar points for a similar value. And he's like immune to combat armies because he's got fights first, and he's got inbuilt defense against shooting armies because he's got loan up.
We're gonna have to talk about that a little more. I need some convincing that like top 5 in the game. I need some convincing on that.
Yeah, Paul went straight to the jugular with that one. I think he's top. I think he's top tier. I'm not ready to say
For
top 5.
points, for loan up, for the base size, for all the stuff, he's going to rank right. He'll score high in a lot of stats. I'll say that. But we'll get there. We'll let y'all decide. Let's talk about this army rule. Army-wide rule is the Thrill Seekers. If your army faction is Emperor's Children, this unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced or fell back. But when doing so, there are a couple of terms and conditions, as you like to say, Adam Camilleri.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot target a unit it was within engagement range at the start of the turn. It cannot target a unit from that was the target of another unit's charge or attack this phase.
So this is a very strong ability, but is not without. It takes you some work to do it. You got to line it up. I like this a lot. I like this a lot more. The fact that it's got caveats on it, that it's got riders, that it makes you play differently. It's not just flat advance and do whatever you want in this army. Because I think this is much more interesting to unpack. So, first caveat: you can't fall back and charge back into the same target. Cool, fantastic. Stops you from perpetually having fights first and perpetually always hitting first into like a hard to chew, option. But you can definitely fall back and charge into something else, and then just charge something else into that target to finish it off. So no problems. And then you can't advance and double charge. You can still get out of a transport move and charge something that was advanced and charged into, but you can't just swarm your opponent and try and put him in jail with just a whole army that advances and charges into their screen.
Which is a big deal when it comes to unit sizes here.
There's some play here too. Like, let's say you're on an objective locked up in engagement range. You can't fall back, shoot that unit, and then control. I mean, there are some. This could have a meaningful impact in what you have to kind of negotiate here.
These are the kind of rules in the game that I love. These are my favorite kinds of rules. Very, very, very powerful bonus that it gives to your army, but not without informing you of some ways that you have to play in order to get the most out of it. You have so many other. I mean, Crossfire. I mean, last edition's Crossfire for Genestealer cults. Incredible buff. You had to maneuver. You had to maneuver, and you had to line it up to make use of it. This is very similar. You can't just unga bunga send all your boys right in and think you're just going to have a great army rule that's going to carry you through the game. You have to make some plans. You have to make some concessions about what units have to go where. I like it a lot. I think it's cool.
And what can Adam, the order in which you shoot things? Like
I got to be an accountability buddy here, Adam. When it came to Genestealer cults, you weren't too. While we all agreed the mechanics were really cool, you weren't the biggest fan. And now you're saying this is good. You're saying we're okay with it. We're okay with the terms, conditions set here.
Oh yeah,
we've got to.
We're going to all sign
come back around.
Contract.
Right. If you're going to give us a powerful army rule, I want people to have to work for it, and I want to work for it as well. I just don't want good stuff for free to be the most prevalent way and the expectation that we have of armies in this game. I want there to be tactical nuance and reasons. And speaking for GSC, I will say 9th edition GSC, that the crosshair mechanic was fantastic, and then they just decided to give you 19 ways to trigger crosshair from across the board by pointing at them.
It didn't feel, like crossfire was just I did like, but like if you just shot like straight fired, you would just regular old fired.
The way it was printed was fantastic, and then the data sheets were like, we don't do any of that.
There are some great detachments in this book as well. So there are a bunch of new units. This is not just ways to make a few noise marines into their own army. There's going to be some new units. There's new things. The Lucius that we were just talking about, completely different stats. There's also a bunch of different detachments to help slice and dice, and bring some personality out of this thing.
So I will say for Lucius specifically, he did lose his 20-year ability that he's had to become the thing that killed him kind of ability, which I think is for the best in the current state of the game that we all play, because that would just be, oh my God, too good.
Let's just talk about Lucius.
I see your face, Red, but you know what I'm right. You know I'm right.
But is he really eternal anymore?
No.
Okay. All right. So he's just
okay.
The fugly.
What's the name of the ship? What's the name of the ship I referenced that other time? The one where if you replace all the panels in the ship, is it still the same ship?
Oh, the Hephaestus or
yeah. It starts with an E. You got it.
Yeah.
It's H. Isn't it starts with
That's what Lucius is. It's a new Lucius every time. He was never immortal.
Ooh, I don't know. No, I don't know about that.
Isn't if you put on the armor, pick up the sword, kind of like if he's got that one of those. Well, anyway.
Anyway, we digress.
Let's talk about Lucius for a second. So I think it's maybe the thing. Then we'll talk about some of the detachments, and then maybe when you hear these stats, you'll plot some other stuff. So Lucius the Eternal, movement of 8. So the guy with just 2 legs, toughness 5, 2+ save with a 4+ invulnerable save, 6 wounds, LD 6, OC 1, has a feel no pain of 5+. Leader and lone operative. A challenge worthy of skill. Each time this model makes an attack that targets a character model or walker unit, you can reroll the hit roll and reroll the wound roll. Duelist Hubris. At the start of the fight phase, if this model is not leading a unit until the end of the phase, it has the fight's first ability. So you can put him with a unit of flawless blades, but after those jerks are gone, he's just walking around doing his thing.
Yeah. Now, I genuinely think the best way to take him is by himself. And
really?
I genuinely think he's just better rocking around by himself, using him as a lone op to hold an objective, get some points early game, and then just sending him into the melee, later in the game. Mostly because he's the only access to lone operative in this army. Sorry to bunch the lead there, but having only one access to it multiplies its value to your army. I mean, say what you will about having 12 lictors or whatever the hell it is in Tyranids, you get a critical mass of lone operatives in which lone operatives just aren't that good anymore. But only having one that you can defend, that you can protect, and then when they get to him or get within 12 inches, okay, so you deep struck within 12 inches to shoot Lucius and didn't kill him. He moves 8. He's going to charge you on a 4 and eat you in the responding turn because he's 2-up save with toughness 5, 6 wounds in cover, with a 4-up invulnerable, 5-up feel no pain. He's durable. He is actually genuinely durable. In combat, 6 attacks, hitting on 2s at 8-3-3. Like we said, full rerolls to hit, full rerolls to wound against character, monster, walker.
With precision on that one.
Yeah. And then he's got a sweep attack as well, right?
Yeah. Well, Lash of Torment with sustain hits 1, 10 attacks. Different profile, but hits on 2, strength 4, neg 1 damage apiece.
And there are innumerable ways and detachments that will enhance Lucius even further in this army. And I think he's incredible. He runs you 140 points, and I think he's absolutely worth it.
So that's why I think puts him, just on those stats alone, some of those abilities, puts him way high up there for characters in that point range.
I agree. Well, he can't, he doesn't buff anything, but Lucius should never kind of buff anything. Kind of goes counterintuitive to what he's all about. But I just keep coming back to the fact he's the only lone op in the book. And as soon as you're the only one thing and in addition to just being a lone op, it's not like he's like a combi weapon lieutenant that doesn't kill anything, doesn't shoot anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't really add
and he moves 8. Like he can move from a tip and objective to the move 8, charge another objective, kill a unit. And like he can be
How do you feel about this comparison, Paul? Sanguinor. Also a lone op. 1 less toughness.
Who wins?
Same. Whoever fights first. Which in this case is
Lucius. Well, they both have 5.
Unless, it's Lucius, unless the Sanguinor Heroic intervenes into an existing combat, or it's whoever's turn it is.
Or the flawless blades that Lucius is leading charge in. That way he doesn't have fight first. Sanguinor has fight first because he's got he's with the unit.
I will say, if they just both hit each other simultaneously, Lucius has much more of a chance of surviving due to the feel no pain. Because they'll both have a 4-up invuln against each other, and then that's where it stops for the Sanguinor, and then its 2 wounds go through, Sanguinor's dead, whereas Lucius will still have the 5-up to have an opportunity to spike, especially against the dev wounds on the Sanguinor's profile.
Yeah. So very strong characters. So I really, really do like that strength 8, neg 3, damage 3. With the 6 attacks and precision, and then the fights first and lone up. I think you make a real compelling case to put Lucius in your army. But as y'all can tell, very, very different than Lucius it was before. But I like this, especially in reference to the rest of the army. First attachment. So there are what I think are a couple of standout detachments in the book. One of them does let you include demons in your army if you want a selection of Slaanesh demons later. Oh, go ahead.
So I had an assumption with something that I assumed was going to be a small sandbox of models. I was of assumption that we would get like a Tau equivalent Codex. And by that I mean like they'd have, 3 or 4 detachments. I was dumbfounded that they got, 6 detachments?
6, yeah.
Yeah, I was absolutely floored. I was like, this is awesome. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Sorry. Mercurial Host is the detachment rolls Quicksilver Grace. You can reroll advanced rolls made for Emperor's Children units from your army.
Awesome. Just awesome. Really good rule.
Yes. And so you're going to sense a theme around some of these, and we can come back and talk about some of the others. The one I want to jump to, though, is the Peerless Bladesman. I think this is one of the best attachments in the book. Each time an Emperor's Children unit from your army is selected to fight, if it made a charge move this turn, select one of the abilities below. While resolving those attacks, melee weapons equipped by the model in the unit have either lethal hits or sustained hits 1.
It's fantastic. And I love how it echoes the Chaos Space Marine Army rule. Well, whereas they need to charge to get it, but they don't have to risk taking the mortals from pacting. And so they just get it if they charged. And I think it's fantastic. Really good rule.
Fulfilling their pact there with Slaanesh.
I will let you know, this detachment, I believe, has 3 of the best enhancements you could buy. And there are 3 things that will fundamentally change the way your opponent has to play into this army. The first one is Blinding Speed, which is once per battle at the start of the fight phase, you get fights first. You just turn on fights first for your unit at the start of the fight phase. You just telling your opponent about that 5 times a game is going to generate value, let alone if you ever use the dang thing.
With an army, you're probably going to be moving across the tables. Like you're going to be kind of forcing
Correct.
interaction with your opponent.
Well, that's exactly right. So this army incentivizes you to get the charge, to get your detachment ability. This Emperor's Children already wants to be closing distance, and I think the most powerful things they can do are in melee. But then you're going to get countercharged. Well, sure, go ahead, countercharge me, mate. I have fights first. I'm going to eat you too. It becomes a big problem for your opponent. I know you love this next enhancement, and then I want to tell people about the last one.
So the distortion. This is a great. I feel like it's a great enhancement. I'll tell you why in a second. In Emperor's Children model only, add 1 to the attacks and damage characteristics of melee weapons equipped by the bearer. And I believe that a walking demon prince, and let's go ahead and just get to the demon prince.
I'm a huge fan of this walking demon prince. I like the World Eater one, but this one's good. This is great too.
This is Walker Prince's Ranger. Movement of 10, toughness 10, 2+, 4+, save, wounds 10, LD 6, OC 3, but the Hellforge weapon strike, attack 6, hits on 2, strength 8, neg 2, 3 damage. So, welcome to 4 damage apiece. That seems like it's a real problem.
Yeah, I've had a bit of a problem with Demon Princes this edition that don't have a quality enhancement, feeling anemic. Like I just don't feel like they did enough damage, and this is a great way to make this guy feel like an absolute beater.
Mm-hmm. He's got a bunch of cool abilities here. While this model is within 3 inches of one or more friendly Slaanesh infantry units, the model has the Lone Op ability. So
huge.
This Demon Prince also gets Lone Op, so basically going to be like creeping around until it gets that. I mean, okay, let's compare this to the Flying Demon Prince with a movement of 14. Like this Demon Prince moves when you're not having to deal with that vertical distance. I'd probably even say better than a Flying Demon Prince. I mean, of course, flight has some advantages, but real strong here. Lone Op, you'd be able to position when you get those that charge off, I believe. Then the excessive vigor. While a friendly Slaanesh unit is within 6 inches of this model, if this unit made a charge move this turn, improve the armor penetration characteristics of melee weapons equipped by this model by 1. So AP 3 on those things that are now damage 4.
Yep.
Esoteric Death. If this model is destroyed by melee attacks, if it has not fought this phase, roll a d6 and a 2+. Do not remove the model. The model can fight after attacking. Unit has finished making its attacks and then removed from play. So fight on death.
I like it a
abilities.
lot. Yeah. So it's got an inbuilt defensive mechanic, an inbuilt offensive mechanic, and an inbuilt insurance mechanic, as I like to call fight on deaths and stuff like that. I think this is a great spread of abilities on this. And yeah, Distortion, the enhancement, just like pushes this guy to a whole new level of damage capability.
I think Distortion Princes are going to be like a thing.
I love that you just decided that's going to be that's going to be a name now, and you are correct. It is.
So what's that next one you were going to talk about?
So the last one here is another one that I think is an absolute banger, and like you're going to be hard pressed to not take all 3 of these. Rise to the challenge. Infantry model only. So once per battle at the end of the fight phase, if the bearer is within engagement range of 3 or more enemy models, it can use this enhancement. If it does, the bearer can fight 1 additional time. When doing so, you can select 1 ability using the Exquisite Swordman detachment rule to apply to those attacks. So you get to choose whether you want lethal or sustained on this second activation. And it's like one of the only 2 fights twices in the game at the moment. And then I want to tell you about one of the stratagems, which is called Incessant Violence, which is 1 CP.
Beat me to it. That's exactly where I was going.
You go for it then, Red. Tell us.
Yeah. So 1 CP. When in the fight phase, just before an Emperor's Children unit from your army consolidates, you choose Emperor's Children unit. So it doesn't have to be just infantry, which we've seen in a lot of other armies. It is just an infantry unit. But this is any unit. Till the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes a consolidate move, it can move up to 6 inches instead of up to 3, provided your unit ends within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units. That's massive.
Massive. Now let me tell you a little story about the special spicy, extra bladey, essentially Chaos Lord Exultant, which is what they have instead of a Chaos Lord. Very comparable. Comes with a very good quality melee weapon, which is the Phoenix Power Spear, which I'm a huge fan of. It's got Lance, 5 attacks, and essentially the same profile as a Custodes Guardian Spear, which is very ironic. Hits on 2s at strength 7 -2 damage. Whilst leading a unit, models in that unit have lethal hits. So in this army, you can always select sustained. Well, on this unit, you can always select sustained and just get both. And then once per battle at the start of the fight phase, this model can use his ability. If it does until the end of the phase, add 3 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons equipped by this model and improve the AP by 1. So he goes to 8 attacks at AP 3, 2 damage. And then you get to pile in 6 and do it again. And because then, it's once per battle. Yeah, sorry.
Well, on top of that, you also have Cruel Bladesman, stratagem 1 CP, that you can, until the end of the phase, improve the armor penetration of melee weapons equipped by models. Yeah, exactly.
AP 4 with Lance, man. 8 attacks.
Ridiculous.
Demolish him. Just demolish him. And, of course, I believe the best combo here is to attach him to one of the units of the new battle line. But I'm sure we want to jump the gun that quickly.
I don't know. I think maybe we do that. Maybe we do jump into the how these link to why we. Well, I think it better explains why we think this is one of the standout detachments.
Yeah. So so both of the I will let you guys know right now. Unfortunately, there are no cultist equivalents in this army. So there's no very cheap battle line equivalents to do stuff, but both of the battle line Space Marines that they've given you are exceptional. The Infractors is the one I'm going to talk about now. They're pretty much your legionary equivalents, whereas the other battle line is pretty much a brand new thing they've made for Emperor's Children, which is very exciting. So these guys are movement 7, and you'll notice every model in this army moves 1 inch faster than its contemporaries. So even the Terminators move 6 rather than 5. Excessive Assault is their detachment rule. They have Scout 6 base, and it is denoted that if the Chaos Lord equivalent joins these guys, he will also get Scout 6. So there's no there's no nombo here. So and this has the same ability as Legionnaires. It's real 1s to wound and 4 rolls to wound if they're on objectives. They come with 4 power sword attacks each, which are very good when you give them lethal hits and then sustained hits and then 1 CP plus 1 AP. And you just got 40 attacks at strength 4 AP 2 1 damage with lethal hits. You will genuinely kill light tanks just with the unit. And then of course the Chaos Lord absolutely mulligans one himself as well.
Don't forget they're re-rolling 1 to wound, right? And then all wounds if they're on an objective.
Yep.
I know that's you can look at it and say that's good, but when you do it and it comes up quite frequently, it also feels good.
I would also like to say I do like their icon ability. Which is at the end of the shooting phase or the fight phase, if the bearer's unit destroyed 1 or more enemy units that phase, the bearer's unit can take a leadership test. If you pass, you get a CP. So it's really good if you want to just try and score every card and you don't want to be cycling. Essentially, I think most armies have 2 to 3 units of these Infractors in their army, and so they're going to be going out and trading on middle objectives early on against people's scouts and infiltrators, Stormboys, Gretchen, stuff like that. And then you get the ability to just be like, oh, do I want to try and do sabotage, or do I want to just turn it into a CP? Go kill the Gretchen, get your CP, try and go for sabotage, go reach as high as you can, baby.
All that access, right, like Sinesh wants.
Yeah, at your fingertips.
Digging it. What's the other battle line?
The other battle line is...
My favorite.
Yeah, go for it, Red.
Oh, man. Tormentors, right? So, I mean, they're pretty much like your Chaos Space Marine equivalent, except for the fact that Tormentors, again, moving at 7 inches, come with Infiltrators. And I think that's huge. I think it's massive that this army's battle line starts out with, it just shows how fast this whole army is going to be. If they're not scouting with the Infractors, the Tormentors are already starting out the field. You own most of the battle space, and then it's just how soon is the rest of it going to catch up. And so with Infiltrators, their ability to pop in and pop out, and then their objective defiled is they essentially have sticky objectives. And then go ahead.
We need to pause there, because this represents something brand new that we have not gotten. That there's no other way to get a unit that stickies objectives onto mid-board objectives efficiently pre-game, without getting enhancements and stuff like that and adding additional characters and either blowing out the cost or going out of your way to try and maneuver it to happen. This just represents extreme early game scoring potential. Ridiculous. The fact that they move 7 and infiltrate, I think this unit is superstar.
You're forcing your
score.
player.
Yeah.
You're again talk about forcing interaction with your opponent. This is something you have to. You start that clock super early.
Exactly right.
To where there's no rest. They have to maybe play aggressive.
because you just let's just say you just take 2 units of these guys. Like you're on a 5 objective mission, maybe a search and destroy. You put 5 guys on the middle objective, 5 guys on the left hand, the top left objective from your point of view. You go first, sticky in both, walk off. Scout up all your scouting units into aggressive positions, and then you're going to rack up 15s while not exposing a single model, while your opponent has to put things on those objectives to stop you just getting auto scores, and then you get to go and eat them at your pleasure. Like that's how I see this yin and yang kind of working, where the infiltrators go up, sticky all the objectives as efficiently as possible, and draw people into the units you scout up aggressively. And I love that. That's just like some good fundamental 40k goodness.
You talk about 2 great battle lines, so I figured we go ahead and talk about them as well before going on and talk about some of these more detachments. And we did mention there's a way to get some demons into your list. I'd say it's a reasonable amount, a small amount of demons into your army.
They've got, I want to say it's about 5 data sheets.
Yeah, it's a small subset of the Slashy Demons.
Well,
Notably, they didn't give you any of the Herald equivalents. So none of the Torment Bringers, none of the Transweavers, or even the Mask of Slanesh.
let's talk about this, the Carnival of Excess, and then we'll take a break and come back and talk about the rapid evisceration list, because I think we'll see out the gate, like right out the gate, the Peerless Bladesman and the Rapid Evisceration list. And then I think there'll also be a lot of people that gravitate towards this ability to mix the Chaos Space Marines and the demons together.
Well, we got to mention that we're recording this the day that the points came out, and yes, we knew enough to wait until the points came out. It totally wasn't an accident. And the points completely changed my estimation of a lot of the Slanesh units. When I was looking at the points in the back of the book, I was like, oh, I'm not sure I can really afford to have everything I want from Emperor's Children and take a couple of good units of Slanesh demons. And now I think you really can.
Oh, really? Oh, so you think it? Okay, well, let's talk about this. So the Carnival of Excess. When you say demonic empowerment, that's the detachment rule. While the Emperor's Children units from your army is within 6 inches of one or more friendly Legion of Excess units, those are the demonic units, the Legion of Excess units. Unit is empowered. While Legion of Excess unit from your army is within 6 inches or one or more friendly Emperor's Children units, it is empowered. While a unit from your army is empowered, weapons equipped by models in that unit have the Sustain Hits 1 ability. If such a weapon already has a Sustain Hits ability, each time an attack is made with that weapon, an unmodified hit roll of 5 or more scores a critical hit. Then it goes on to tell you,
this can get very out of hand. Sorry, mate, go.
Yeah, so a strike force could have up to 1,000 points of Legion of Excess model. So half your points could be Legion of Excess.
So immediately when I saw this, I looked at how many points would it cost for me to get a Lord Cacophonist, who is the Chaos Lord, the Daka Chaos Lord who
will be in every army, by the way. I think an absolute just hoss. I mean, you realize we've talked about some amazing things and haven't even talked about the Primarch yet. So
yeah,
it's a lot of good stuff in this book. We'll get there. We'll definitely talk about Fulgrim. Don't get me wrong, but so after we talk about the demons a bit, I'll talk about this Lord Cacophonist.
So straight up that Lord gives sustained hits to the Unity joins, which in 99.9% of cases is going to be Noise Marines. Them getting sustained hits on Noise Marines, which I think is a very good data sheet, and then getting critical 5s on like possibly 2 Blast Masters. Like, oh, baby, we're cooking. So I started looking at the cheapest thing that I would want to pair up with Noise Marines. And it turns out, actually, this is before I saw the points, by the way. And it turns out I was using Seekers. I was going to plan to use, here's my 2 or 3 units of Noise Marines, and here's 5 Seekers to accompany them. Because the Seekers are extremely good at screening off those squads. Because you will notice if and when you get to look at your Noise Marines, their range is quite reduced. They only operate at about 18 inches now. And because of that, they actually want to be able to have something next to them that's cheap and efficient and very fast that can go run interference for them and buy them a turn or 2. And I think those 2 pair up extremely well, especially when you just supercharge those Noise Marines right up to 11 out of 10. That it is true, by the way. Like all the amps for Noise Marines do go to 11 out of 10.
I think
it's a Spinal. It's a Spinal Tap reference. It's a Spinal Tap reference, baby.
But it's got to be a multiple of 6 because it's Slanesh. Uh, so the Legion of Excess units you can take are Shalaxi Hellbane, Keeper of Secrets, Demonettes, Fiends, and Seekers.
Yep.
Those are the demon units you can take as a part of this.
I will say the new Fiend points in the back of that just probably have pretty much been released a day or two after you've listened to this episode. A day or two since they've already been out for a day or two.
Day one patch, right?
Three Fiends for 95 points.
Oh man!
Or you could have 5 Seekers for 90 points. I'm paying those 5 points.
Yeah,
120%. I'm paying those 5 points and getting the 3 Fiends instead. It's wow! It's such a good value.
So the Lord Cacophonist that we were mentioning earlier is the Lord of the Lord Cast Lord equivalents, like you said. Movement is 6, toughness 5, 2+, 4+, 6 wounds. Leader can lead Emperor's Children Terminator Squad or Noise Marines. The obsessive Annunciation. That's
Enunciation.
You got it. Yeah.
Wow, that's okay. Everyone timestamp that. I think that is a first where I got it right and Paul didn't. I think if you've been paying attention,
you're being very generous to me, and I appreciate that. So.
If you're paying attention, you will know that is very rare.
Well, this model is leading a unit. Ranged weapons with equipped by this model, and the unit have sustained hits 1. So as we talked about, if you already have sustained hits 1, it goes to crit 5s. So there we go. Then has the Doom Siren. In your shooting phase, after this model's unit has shot, select one enemy infantry unit hit by one or more of those attacks and roll a 3d6. For each 4+, the enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. If an enemy unit suffers 1 or more mortal wounds as a result of this ability, it must take a battle shock test.
Now, this couples with the Noise Marine ability, which is in your shooting phase after this unit has shot, select one enemy to hit by 1 or more of those attacks. Until the start of your next shooting phase, each time they have to take a battle shock test, they must take it at -1. So they just go together like PB and Jam.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think this Lord is awesome. Is going to be in everybody's army. Be prepared for it. The ranged weapon outside of the Doom Siren on the back there is the Screamer pistol. Ignores cover pistol, 12-inch range, 3 attacks, string 5, -1, 2 damage apiece.
And he comes with that pistol and a power sword, and you can place the power sword with another one of those pistols, which I highly encourage you to do. Yeah, 100%. 6 shots at 5-1-2 ignores cover is actually pretty legit, especially with like the nerfs to things like armor contempt. Yeah, becomes very powerful. Speaking about Noise Marines while we're here, they got virtually the same profile as him, movement 6, toughness 5, 3 up save, 2 wounds. So they are toughness 5 and they do move 6. I've already told you what their data sheet ability is. But I want to tell you about the Blast Master. So the Sonic Blaster and the Screamer Pistol, you already heard about the Screamer Pistol. The Sonic Blaster is essentially just a +6-inch range Screamer Pistol. So 3 shots at 5-1-2 with ignores cover at 18 inches. But the Blast Master is very interesting. So also has ignores cover, 18 inches as well. So 18 inches is all the damage output from this unit. But 3 shots at strength 10 -2, 3 damage ignores cover. And it's just so interesting to me that that's the same profile as a heavy psi cannon on a Dread Knight. And of course you can take 2, you can have a unit of 3 or you can only have a unit of 6 rather. And you can take 2 Blast Masters in a unit of 6, which you absolutely will. But the varied frequency is the thing that really excites me. So this is 6 shots, so 12 shots for the 2 of them. At strength 6 -2 ignores cover, 1 AP. That profile is so very good into Eldar. Like, I mean, oh my god, good. Like, if they had sustained hits 5,
because of the shots,
each Blast Master.
Yeah, because
it's gonna if you have the crit 5s, theoretically, you got 6 shots. You could have, you're going to have 2 misses on average, but you're going to have 2 5s on average, so they're going to get 6 hits. It's going to wound on 2s into any Eldar infantry in the game, and then it's going to take them to their invuln if they're an aspect warrior, even if they're in cover. And it doesn't matter if they're in cover; you got to ignore cover.
Yep.
And so you just have a very good chance of just taking that unit out of the game. There might be 1 or 2 guys left, but you don't really care. And then what? You put 1 more Screamer Pistol in, job done. They are
a lot of people have been talking about fire dragons and stuff, like those types of things. But 2 melt guns running around is not the damage dealing thing you might believe it to be. I mean, it still sucks to be shot in the face if you're in a power armor, but you could cripple some of these units, essentially,
for sure.
with everything in this book. let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about that other attachment we're talking about and Fulgrim. See you in a minute.
FTN is brought to you by Discount Games Inc. Please visit them at www.discountgamesinc.com. And don't forget to ask Jay about ways to save even more on your hobby projects.
We are back, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking out our sponsors. Thanks for leaving us those 5-star reviews. Everything that y'all do, please check out the links in the show notes for other ways to support the show. It means a whole lot. We're going to be talking about the Rapid Evisceration and Fulgrim here in this part of the show. Rapid Evisceration, it's got a big picture of a Land Raider is the detachment art. Mechanized Murder. Each time an Emperor's Children model from your army makes an attack, if it disembarked from a transport this turn, reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1.
Very powerful. Just off the cuff. Everything I just said about Noise Marines, you don't get the crit 5s here, but you have sustain hits if you have the Lord Cacophonus, and so you're just re-rolling into more 6s naturally, and they have a bunch of shots. So this is also a great way. And of course, they really wants to wound. So the Blastmasters, can sometimes have a struggle, winning on 4s into a lot of things like Armigers and War Dogs and stuff like that. And then, of course, they're rolling 1s, so they get across the line a bit easier. And of course, this just is great because there's very few. I've did find there's very few hit roll interactions in this book, but there's a couple of decent wound roll interactions. You're much more likely to get pluses to hit and pluses to wound in this book than rerolls to hit and full rerolls to hit or full rerolls to wound. And so this is a great way of getting a little bit of that juice.
Like that. That's a good spot too. With how do you really juice up the efficiency of your models and still not have to rely on just a simple character or any a blanket rule. I like that. So Emperor's Children, so Sublime Prescience. Sorry, I jumped right into the thing. This is a neat one because I think it's got some combo potential. Emperor's Children infantry model only once per turn. In your movement phase, the bearer can use this enhancement. If it does, select one friendly Emperor's Children transport that is in strategic reserves until the end of the phase. For the purposes of setting up that transport on the battlefield, treat the current battle round as being one higher than it actually is.
Turn 1 Land Raider.
Right
in their not in the deployment zone, but anywhere else.
Somewhere else. But still, turn 1 Land Raider coming on. Now, of course, you got to deploy. If you deploy troops, then you have to also maintain the exclusionary distance and things like that. But you could be. I mean, let's say you were taking the infiltrators from the units we just talked about. You've got a character hanging out somewhere on there to activate this ability. You have how many thousands points at the midfield?
Yeah, top of turn 1.
Yeah.
Essentially all of them. Yeah.
All your 100% of your points in the midfield on turn 1 if you wanted it to. So this detachment is about transport manipulation, getting in and out, doing cool things out of transports. Yeah. And we joke sometimes around about like the Rhino meta, but we have seen like Land Raiders on the table, and like this is not a meme detachment.
Yeah. Yep. Is the Mauler Fiend a vehicle or a monster? Can someone check quickly for me?
Mauler Fiend?
Yes.
I got you.
So they have some great stratagems, and most of these stratagems are utility stratagems. Like there's one CP after the fight phase when you destroy an enemy unit, just hop back into the thing. Well, so for the longest time, for time immemorial, we have been like, a Mauler Fiend was literally brewed up by Vashdor and his buddies to climb walls and bash them down. 1 CP, dynamic breakthrough. Your movement phase, 1 Emperor's Children vehicle unit from your army that has not been selected to move. And to the end of the phase, each time a unit in your model makes a move, it can move through enemy models, excluding monsters and vehicles, and when doing so, it can move within engagement range and not. So it doesn't go through walls, but it does ignore other units. So you can jump over their lines, their gargoyles that are trying to screen you, all that stuff. Vashdor still hasn't figured out how to make it like go through a wall yet, but this is a start. He's
teleported planets before, but yeah.
Yeah, no, Mauler Fiends having like strong fingernails, can't do it.
Look, it's a big universe out there. You never know what's coming down. So outflanking strike, when into your opponent's fight phase, 1 Emperor's Children transport from your army, or up to 2 Emperor's Children dedicated transports from your army. Effect: for each of those transports wholly within 9 inches of one or more battlefield edges, remove it from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves.
Do you know my favorite thing to do with this in my brain? 2 empty rhinos. Just chuck them in your opponent's back line.
Yeah.
And just start going rammy stuff. Just start going tagging stuff, ramming stuff. Put 6 OC or 4 OC and flip an objective. Tank shock someone. Shoot your hunter killer. Well, miss with your hunter killer missile, because that's what all mine do. And yeah, this is such
1
an annoying
CP.
thing. Yeah, 1 CP, 2 rhinos in your backfield. See, mate, just go be annoying.
Value Town. That's where you driving those rhinos to Value Town to win games.
So here's a little thing. If you deploy. If you go, it only works if you go second, but you deploy a couple of rhinos full of noise marines and such on the table, and your opponent's like, yeah, sweet, I'm safe. I don't have to screen that much. They're all on the board. 1 CP, you chuck a noise marine laden rhino into reserve, and then you have the enhancement in your start of turn 1, because you went second, to bring that in turn 1, because now it's in strategic reserve, and it counts at 1 you hide it, and you just go in and blow up a bunch of stuff they thought was all safe.
That could be tough.
I don't see the problem.
Yeah. We talk about, also land raiders. I mean, you could do 2 the value for 2 rhinos, or one fully loaded, brimmed up to the all kit and back land raider.
Yeah. Seems pretty nice.
And again, I don't think this is a mean thing. I really do also think that this detachment was brewed up in the, when was it? Early 2000s. Someone, and it might have been a studio painter. I don't know, and don't know if this is the case, but had a full army of Emperor's Children that were all patterned off of the band Kiss, where they had
that's amazing.
All the rhinos were stages that had the big bulb lights, the appearance of bulb lights.
Isn't that just Malal? Right?
Oh, don't name him. Don't bring that in, please.
No. All I'm saying is, in my headcanon, Kiss are secretly worshippers of the 5th Chaos God.
Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I think that's the type of that's been living. That type of thing has been living in people's heads for a long time, and now we get to see it. With the flexibility of these detachments is kind of one of the cool things about this edition of the game, and it has. I believe it has been a theme of the Emperor's Children for a long time.
Want to talk about that big old Primarch?
So Fulgrim, and it's hard not to compare Fulgrim to other Primarchs. So let's wait and do that until the end. We'll have some critiques at the end if that's okay. If y'all can
totally fine.
Do that. The Fulgrim movement is 16, toughness 11. 2+4+, 16 wounds, lead 5, 6 OC, which is pretty good.
Very nice.
Demonic poisons in your shooting phase and the fight phase. After this model has finished making its attacks, select 1 enemy unit hit by 1 or more of those attacks. Until the end of the battle, that enemy unit is poisoned. At the start of each player's command phase, roll a d6 for each poisoned enemy unit on the battlefield. On a 4+, the enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds.
So essentially the way I see this as working is because, firstly, when we get to his melee profiles, there's not really anything he's charging and not killing. So mostly you're going to want to be whipping stuff to slap poison counters on it, because you don't quite have the time to get to them this turn. And then, bada bing, bada boom, you get to them the next turn or the turn after, and they've taken, 4 or so mortal wounds, and have softened them up.
So the Malefic Lash is what you're talking about as a ranged weapon.
Yeah.
It's 12-inch range, 6 attacks, hits on 2, strength 8, neg 2, 2 damage. So really goes really well into a lot of profiles.
It's good. Sustain hits 1 as well. So you hitting on 2s with 6 shots is average of 6 hits with sustained hits. And then, wounding and Space Marine on a 2. If they're not in cover, they're taking a 5 up. You'll kill half a squad, no problems whatsoever. And then they'll be poisoned. And then maybe they have one scout left who takes 2 mortals on the next turn and dies. I like this ability. I wish it was better. I wish it was better than a 4+. Like, I wish it was better than a 50/50. It's a Primarch's ability. I wish it was like on a 3+ at least, or it was, if it's going to be on a 4+, make it like D3+1 models or something.
What I'm curious about, so until the end of the battle, each time the enemy is poisoned at the start of each player's, not theirs,
Correct.
each player's command phase, roll a d6. Like, what happens if they're in transport? What happens if you put them back in strategic reserves? Those are the types of things I want to know about. I want to know what happens. I think you wither away and die off the table. That's what happens. Like, because this is that.
Well, I mean, in my brain, you haven't ceased being poisoned. You've just gone back into orbit. The poison's still on you, so I assume you'd still cop it.
But I do like that this is, one in both players' turns, and so it's one of those things that you could do in, like, say you at the start of the turn, it would happen at the end of the game too. So bottom of round 5, it would still trigger off potentially.
Exactly
right. And that it's the whole game. It's not the next turn. It is the whole game. So this is, I think, even more powerful than it might read on the surface level of this.
Now, things to bank into Fulgrim when you look at him. He's always going to have the ability to advance and charge, advance and shoot, and fall back and charge because of the army rule. So movement 16 permanent advance and charge with some terms and conditions is extremely quick.
Yeah.
Like, extremely. That's average 19 before you declare a charge, and then you +7. So average 26-inch threat range, which, it could be a lot higher depending on your advance roll, your charge roll. But it comes with the melee weapons. So, as you expect, very lethal. Everything's got sustained hits 1. He has 6 attacks with the strike ability, hitting on 2s, of course. Strength 14 -3 las cannon, so D6 +1. And then the sweeps are extremely good, also having sustained hits. 12 attacks at 8/2/2, once again, similar to the lash. So, I mean, in one turn, you can put out 18 attacks hitting on 2s via shooting and then charging that all hit on 2s, all have sustained hits at 8/2/2. If you are in a matchup where that is a good profile, Fulgrim is your boy. He will absolutely pick it up. And then he has extra attacks. He's got 6 extra attacks at strength 6 -1 damage just for his whippy tail.
We haven't necessarily talked about the demon Primarch of Slaanesh. We are talking about it, but it happens to also be a rule that has here is at the start of your opponent's command phase, select one of the abilities in the Demon Primarch of Slaanesh section, see left, which we will just tell you what it is. Until the start of your opponent's next command phase, this model has that ability, and there are 3 abilities if you want to run down that.
Yeah, so go Red.
No, go ahead.
No.
Okay, fine. I guess I can read. Beguiling Form is the first one. Each time a model makes an attack that targets this model, subtract 1 from the hit roll. The second one is Demonic Speed. This model is the fight's first ability. And the third one is Enthralling Hypnosis, which is an aura that when an enemy unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time that unit is selected to fall back, it must take a leadership test. If that test has failed, that unit must remain stationary this phase instead. So out of those 3, I mean, you can see where they all apply themselves as you're fighting through, right? I mean, if you want them to survive, you go for subtract 1 from hit roll. If you really want them to survive when it comes to a fight, you make them fights first. And again, like looking at this, there's differences in some of these abilities, the different major domo, whatever creatures, whether it's Gilliman, whether it's Abaddon or Angron or now Fulgrim, at the start of this opponent's command phase, or at the start of your opponent's command phase, you select one of these. So as they're going into it, you kind of have an idea before the enemy gets to do whatever, you get to choose one of these 3 things. Exactly. And that timing is actually kind of the key thing to those 3 abilities.
I would have told you, if you had to pick these in your command phase, these were all awkward and not great. But because you picked them in your opponent's command phase, none of them is exceptional. Of course, if you're playing against any melee matchups, you're going to just sit in fights first until informed otherwise. But then you get full information of your entire turn before you swap. You get full information of advances and charges, shooting, fighting, pile-ins, consolidates, everything, even scoring, like what you're able to score before you try to change this up. If you're in a shooting matchup, you sit in the -1 to hit pretty much all game until you start tagging a bunch of stuff. Then you maybe try and stop them from falling back. And then you get to see, I didn't kill my opponent. I was able to make a consolidate into a new unit. I'm going to switch and see if I can stop them falling back and just blank a whole Tower Army's turn into Fulgrim. That is actually very powerful. Now, just like Lucius, doesn't do a lot for the rest of your army. What did you say? What did you say is Paul?
Well, I do want to point out that the beguiling form is not just melee attacks; that's all attacks.
Correct.
So that's
Right. That's
you
true.
might spend a
That's
lot
true.
of time and more time in that section than you think.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
he's basically just kind of a beater, kind of goes out
Mm.
and kills things, and or is potentially like distracts your opponent a little
Yeah.
bit because of that -1 to hit, and then such an an impressive invulnerable and toughness and number of wounds that the rest of your army gets to do its thing.
Yeah, he's pretty much the fastest thing in the game that has fights first, and that in itself is a powerful thing. Like just being like, I can just place fights first on demand where I need it in my lines with heroic intervention possibility with all these other options. I think he's good, but I'm not sure he's good at the points that he is right now. So right now he's costed at 385, and I would much prefer to see that around the 350, 340 mark before I'd start actively telling people that you should take him, because at that many points you're missing a lot of the rest of the army. You really want to have like a lot of units in rhinos and a lot of units of 5 like good value battle line.
I think it's tough
then,
to
of course-
judge right now because there's a lot of firepower out here.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
actually, let's
I said I think on all that because no one's played with this army yet. So.
Yeah, in the context of the rest of the units, and maybe that's a good time to talk about it because I know in the pre-show we mentioned like unit sizes and things like that. Where are you spending your points in this army,
Right.
and how much do you get for those points?
Right. Look at the unit sizes. Right out the gate, we've got a lot of 3s and 6s. Terminators don't go above 5. That's kind of awkward for some. I know we've seen some. Who was paying attention 6 months ago when Imperial Agents dropped and Grey Knights could only go up to 5? I may have been, but here we are with Emperor's Children with only 5 Terminators, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It clearly plays itself into a certain way in which you build it out. Because 10 Terminators can be oppressive. We've seen it. We've seen it run with 10 Terminators in Abaddon. We've seen it run in other armies, and they can do a lot. But when you go back to their limit, and there's clearly a reason for that. But then you look at points cost, and we talked about the Eldari Codex. We've looked at now Emperor's Children, and you can see a difference in the points approach. I do think, Adam, you mentioned the day 1 patch on points. By the time this releases, those should have come out. So
They will be. I think will be at the same time that this goes up for pre-order. You'll see the points and stuff.
And so with that, you can see where they were initially building this out, but then, again, we all know it takes months and months and months to build this stuff out. And as they develop it and come up through it, the points approach to this was going to be really tough to build out this army. I think it's a little bit easier with the points decreases because we see in this day 1 patch a lot of decreases across the board for units, but it's definitely something where you're going to have these smaller units that can do a lot of things. And back to the terms and conditions and standards of how we go about this, there's certain aspects of this of how the army's going to have to approach itself and what it's going to fight, who's charging when and where with what units, because it really does have a very fast MSU feel to it in a lot of cases, because it just can't, it's literally constrained of going beyond 6 units or 6 models in a lot of cases with those units. So I think that's all something to consider.
Maybe all kind of points for Primarchs and Rhinos.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so that's what leads me to believe that Fulgrim wouldn't make the cut as often as not, because if you look at the army as being his 5 good value guys in various rhinos and things, the best value the thing they have to shoot a las cannon at is a rhino, and you're like, go for it, totally fine. But then you add Fulgrim in there, and now the best value they think is the dunk on is a Primarch. The best value thing they have to Oath of Moment turn 1 is a rhino, or it could be a Fulgrim. And so that's why I like to avoid those situations. Like when I've got an army that's operating at a really good level of he's no good value for your anti-tank. He's nothing your anti-tank gets to sink damage into. And then adding one big piece, I'm always an advocate of see if you can do it without it, mate. I'm going to tell everyone to play with Fulgrim as much as they want, like as much as they want.
Well, it's gonna be a cool.
But
It's a cool model, which we know.
it's a brand new.
Yeah.
It's a freaking new Primarch into the game, baby. Enjoy, go nuts. Yeah. But yeah, the most competitive of lists, I think likely don't have Fulgrim in.
Yeah, if the strongest critique of the composition of what an army looks at is like, oh no, you've got some other cool things to take that make you question whether or not you take the obvious cool thing to take, that's not necessarily bad, so I will certainly indulge you there.
There's one more unit I want to talk about. We haven't mentioned the Flawless Blades.
No, there's other character models too. So this is not like a Death Guard character model army, but there are some cool character models in this, and there are some other units. There are some maybe potential like notable things missing, or at least
yes, I would 100%. That was my first critique, and probably is going to be what ends up being my standing critique of this book, is the questionable Chaos Space Marine units that made the transition over from the Codex to this Codex. It really has me baffled about the ones that made it in and the ones that didn't. So first and foremost, I already said it. There's no cultist equivalent. There's no Poxwalker, Zangor, cultist, Nurgling. There's nothing
which
cheaper
does
than
seem to me a little bit strange because of Slaanesh being that that allure,
like the one that tempts people, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But maybe they all became demonettes, or got possessed by demonettes. I don't know.
Yeah, but it would be very easy for them to have here are the mortal thralls. Here's our rabble of enchanted idiots that we soak into your bolt of fire.
I don't want to say too much because there are chaos spawns with OC1 in here, so look, it's a good book, all right.
so here's the quizzical ones. The Mauler Fiend made it into this book. The Forge Fiend did not. The Land Raider made it in. The Vindicator did not. The Predator did not. But somehow the Helldrake did. This is why I'm scratching my head. I'm like, and I'm just going to say it straight out. The biggest issue with Emperor's Children, and the thing you will find will be the skill check of your ability with this army, is how well you negotiate transports. Because there is not, outside of a Land Raider and a unit of Noise Marines that has to be very close to do it, there isn't a great way to crack a transport in this book efficiently. There isn't an efficient way from range to crack
Distortion Prince.
Yeah, from range.
It moves 10. Got loan up.
It does. It's essentially a range. It
is a transport killing missile. Yeah.
Fire off the Distortion Prince.
I'm just kidding.
It's a trebuchet. I did want to tell you about Flawless Blades because we were discussing this. This is like the 8-bound equivalent in this army. We thought they're akin to Possessed and 8-bound. They're movement 8, toughness 5, 3 up, 5 up. Armor save and invuln, 3 wounds, leadership 6, and 1 OC. They've got a bolt pistol. Who cares? In weapon, they have in weaponness, in melee, they have a bliss blade, which is 3 attacks, hitting on 2s. Very nice, and it's good because a lot of the possessed and I almost see these guys as like Blade Guard. It's like the Blade Guard equivalent.
That's a good call.
Yeah, they're not the heavy infantry, they're the medium infantry. If a Space Marine is an infantry now, like the Space Marine because it's the baseline, that's the infantry. These guys are one step above them, but 1 step below a Terminator, Centurion, Aggressor. So they have 1 less attack than a lot of those contemporaries, but they hit on 2s where most of them hit on 3s. And like I said, there's actually not a huge amount of ways to get rerolls to hit in this book, so hitting on 2s is excellent. Now, tell us about their data sheet ability, because this is real interesting.
They have a 5+ invulnerable save too. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Oh yeah, yep. No one else had it up. I was talking to the void. No one's got my back.
No, I got you. Fine. Each time this unit is selected to fight, it can call upon demonic patrons. If it does, till the end of the phase, each time a model in this unit makes an attack, an unmodified wound roll of 3 up scores a critical wound. At the end of the fight phase, if this unit called upon demonic patrons this phase and no enemy models were destroyed by attacks made by models in this unit this phase, 1 model in this unit is destroyed.
So a critical wound means auto wound, right? It means a 3 up auto wounds, always wounds.
Yup.
Yikes! How are you doing that and not killing a thing? Did you try it on with Canis Rex? Yeah, fair enough. That's what you get. But apart from that, This is a great ability. Like hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s against everything in the game, regardless of toughness, regardless of everything. It just wounds on 3s. They come in units of 3 or 6. Now, this unit in my mind was the one where I was like, holy moly, please find me a way to get a character into this. This unit is like just begging for a buff, any buff. And
you can get a character into this.
Which one, Mo, mate?
I mean, it's Lucius the Eternal.
So Lucius is the only thing that can join these guys, and then Lucius loses Lone Operative and loses Fights First if he joins them.
Womp
So
womp.
there is a case for it, though, because there is one detachment, which is a very interesting detachment. It's going to take me a lot to explain, but it results in you having an exalted champion model, a favored champion, in your army every turn. And every time you kill a unit with a character unit, that unit becomes your favored champion. And the favored champion unit always rerolls to wound. And so that was like sick. That would mean the Flawless Blades unit literally kills God, because it's going to hit on 2s, wound on 3s, rerolling against everything. But it's not quite worth the squeeze.
I think that a Flawless Blade unit with Lucius, like, basically like auto kills a knight and everything too. Like, it's
pretty silly.
Yeah, because Lucius will auto wound on 3s as well.
That's right, because it's each time this unit, not like a model.
Yes. So that's the reason to do it. But I'm personally of the opinion Lucius by himself. I mean, you can just take both. And then in the games where you think you need to kill God, Lucius goes in the unit.
Remember, when you're driving to Value Town in that transport detachment, you might want to load up a lot of things into a Land Raider, and maybe you do have to attach Lucius to the Flawless Blades, and then put him
missile him on out,
and send him mid-table.
So yeah, I've got some criticisms in the units that they chose to add in this. I mean, I think this army would go up several levels in power if the Predator was added or the Vindicator was added. Simply because if someone rocks up with like a 6 Sagittar Votan list, you're actually in for a rough time, because you're going to have to go punch those things to death.
I mean, just let the record show. It was not me. It was not me who brought the Vindicator into this.
Yeah.
Oh, no one's going to remember that. They're going to...
I know. The Red brought up the Vindicator again.
So the reason it's quizzical is that, sure, the Vindicator got replaced in Death Guard by the PBC. Totally fine. Very great. Very good tank. 1,000 Suns have access to Vindies. Do World Eaters have access to Vindies?
They don't. I got you.
But they got Predators, right? And they got Forge Fiends.
They do. Correct.
Yeah. So for this detachment to have none of those things, none of the long fire, assets, is interesting to me. And that's going to be like I said, it's going to be the biggest issue with people playing this into an open field. I still think it's an extremely good army, but you have to transition from I'm going to go absolutely kill your army immediately on turn 1 to, all right, I'm going to try and deny your primary, make you get out of the transports, and then kill you. And it's just a very different game.
The Chaos Spawn that I briefly brought up, they move 10. They also have the Scuttling Horrors ability. Once per turn, when an enemy ends a normal advance or fallback move within 9 inches of this unit, the unit can make a normal move of up to 6 inches.
Huge.
Massive.
So, OC1, as I mentioned, Chaos Spawn, Feel No Pain 5+ on these spawn as well, with a bunch of damage to attacks. So, we like our spawn around here.
They're great little utility monkeys.
So that is not an exhaustive review of the Codex, but those are some of the high points, and I think how they're going to interact. I think that the things we kind of talked about in those detachments are going to be what folks gravitate to in the early release of this book.
And it's just so awesome to have a new army in the game. So just a brand new army, something that you could not play by itself outside of every now and then them getting a detachment that was attached to Chaos Space Marines. This is just awesome, and it's been a long time coming, and I'm here for it.
This is people are a fan of this faction, have been for a long time. It is cool that with the idea of what they do, and I know people are excited about it. So I hope y'all like it when it gets in your hands. There is a lot of power in here, but like you mentioned, you got to kind of work for it a little bit.
Yeah, and I like that aspect of it. I like that they just don't. Well, so there are some armies that I wish worked a little bit harder for it, but I'm happy. World Eaters is the comparison, right? Because World Eaters in their current form, and mind you, they don't have a codex yet, so take this with a grain of salt. Right now, they just exist, and just better by cool. Are you still breathing? You got a bunch of buffs.
They work for it, man. They got to get across the whole table.
It's true. Well, these guys do as well. That's what I mean. These both only trigger on the charge.
But these guys start in the middle of the table.
That's exactly right, and that's why there should be a little caveat here. But how cool would it be if there was a similar one for World Eaters coming up, which makes them play a little bit different, but is just as powerful?
More Yahtzee.
Or you're like, no, Adam, no, more power. Everything fights on death automatically.
Yeah.
No 2-up even. Just fight on death, army-wide.
More to come about this, but it is very neat. I hope you all enjoy it. Before we wrap up the show, I want to talk briefly about kind of a hobby segment. I can't really call this finishing moves because it was about starting a model that absolutely intimidated me. And I put some pictures up on Instagram and Blue Sky, and I can put a link to those in the show notes. But I'm fights with dice on either of those things. And the model I'm talking about is Asherman. Asherman has, a very cool model. It is a centerpiece, could be potentially a centerpiece model. It's a Phoenix Lord of the Eldari, has cool looking armor. People are going to be looking at it because it's on a giant, as far as Eldari go, a big base. It's stood up on the tactical rocks. It has a banner, a power sword that is at least as long as the model is tall.
So I have to at this point say the best thing they did with the Phoenix Lord upgrade is keep their banners. I mean, do you remember, boys? 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition?
Classic.
Every unit's got a freaking banner. Every one of them. We're bannerless people. Bannerless.
Yeah. This one has a picture on not just one, but both sides of it. Like thankfully it's very well sculpted, and we'll get to that point or whatever. But I'm staring at this model and I'm thinking, what on earth am I going to do with this thing? Like number one, I don't get me wrong. I'm proud of how I paint, and like comparisons to the death of happiness or whatever the quote is, and all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like it's attained. I can make it look okay, but it's just like, is okay good enough? And can I tackle some of these things on this model? It's got a very defined face, and people have expectations of how this model is supposed to look, and I think that's maybe what was the weight of it.
Yeah. And I've found a lot of people intimidated by Eldari models in particular, mostly because there's not really where Space Marines are like similar curves to Eldari, though on much bigger models, but there's very defined breaks where one color ends, the next color starts. Eldar just kind of all moves and blends into each other because that's the aesthetic. And on much smaller models to find where those breaks are, where do I blend this? Where do I shade this? Where does this happen? I know a lot of people
Gyms everywhere. They got pouches.
Exactly.
It's like an Age of Sigmar model. In some instances, there's which are phenomenal sculpts, but they have way more buckles and badges and stuff and whatever. So I'm looking at this like, what? Like, come on, man. Like. Took me a while to kind of psych myself up to it. So what I decided to do is remove some what I considered variables from the equation. And because sometimes what I do, and I'm sure, and maybe everybody's guilty of this, is that, you get to the point where your brushes are starting to wear themselves down the nubs. They don't have the tips on them that you started with. And, you just compensate for it with how you do with your painting or whatever. That you're supposed to thin your paints, but yet I'm sure we don't always thin them to the consistency that we're supposed to. I say quote unquote supposed to, but as they're recommended by the subject matter experts and things like that. But it does help the flow of the paint. Mm-hmm. So all those two things specifically, I kind of convinced myself that I'm going to do. I actually broke out the good brushes. I have had a set of like Artificer brushes that they're good brushes, but suffice it to say, a brand new brush with a strong tip on it. That helped me reduce the variable. I'm no longer having to go back and touch up and re-ever. I can get a little bit more control out of my brush, which gave me a better result. And I knew that. I knew that if like there's a reason for this, we all do a little bit better. But I made myself do it. I kind of helped get myself over the intimidation of this model and the expectations of what it should look like, what I thought people were going to view it. On the table, I want it to look good. Oh, is it going to match the rest of my army? Should I just rip this banner off? Fighting all that anxiety and being able to actually put it on the table. And I will say I'm pretty proud of the results and going back to kind of fundamentals, removing variables such as, a old beat up brush, not thinning my paint so I could get, a more control over them, adding some of those elements back into the equation made me feel better, which made me want to start painting, which got me to the end of that model. So
Nice.
if anybody else needs that motivation to get out there, do what you got to do to get it. I found motivation by kind of getting back, controlling the things I could control. And your skill, of course I can control my hands and make it paint, but that doesn't always work out that sometimes. Sometimes we need a little bit of assistance, and going to a brush with a good tip on it. I don't even want to prescribe a type of brush or whatever, because what I find sometimes in tutorials that those artists, certainly will call them artists, are using larger brushes than I'm comfortable using to do some of the more what I consider finer work. And so I don't want to say get this one particular brush, but I think getting a good brush with a tip on it, you're going to have more control. Thinning the paints to the right consistency, you're going to have more control, which is going to make the things in your brain easier to put on the stuff in the physical. So just wanted to mention that as an actual struggle. I stared at this model for probably 2 days before I summoned up enough courage to paint it. And maybe it was the banner. It was just a very intimidating model, but I got over it, and I got over it by kind of working through these steps, and it seemed to work out. So maybe that's something that folks can benefit from if you're in the similar position. That's the show this week.
It's a great show. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, we will be back next week. It absolutely is. I mean, the Warhammer stuff just keeps hitting, and I feel very confident that Slaanesh players will find love and life in this book and be able to kind of revel in this faction a bit. And of course, new Primarch. This is is there a way to get all 4 Primarchs on the table?
I mean, technically.
There's no legal way to make the army, but they do fit in the points.
It's well, we can dream, can't we? All right, we'll see y'all next week, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Bring back open play. Anyway.
See y'all.
See ya.